I want to introduce Dr. Neal Barnard, who's written over 18 books. Dr. Barnard is an adjunct professor at George Washington University. He's done multiple sessions with PBS, and we're here tonight to celebrate his latest book, The Cheese Trap. And without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Dr.
Thank you, Gwen. Well, thank you, Gwen. And how about a hand for Gwen for all she has done? Thank you. You know, I have to say I really love it because for a doctor it's an easy matter to talk about what we ought to be eating and what we should make, but Gwen actually makes it. And I love the innovation of having a Kickstart program, which we've tested in lots of places. We did a program at Geico and Pepco and lots of other places. But to be able to come in, have a meal, have a lecture, then have food that you bring home and stick in your refrigerator so that you don't have to necessarily feel the need to cook all the time. And then you come back, and it's just so life-changing. So thank you, Gwen, for all that you do. And thank you, Pericles, also. Thank you. So I got to tell you, though, however, we do a lot of research studies where we change people's diets, and people will say, this is fantastic. Ever since I went on a plant-based diet, I've lost weight, my diabetes has improved, or it's gone, or my cholesterol is way down. Except there's one food that I just really, I really miss. And it's not ice cream, and it's not a steak, it's cheese. You know what is this ring a bell? Have you heard people say this? And I thought, what's that about? And I kept hearing this over and over again, so I decided to dig into it, and I want to share you some of what we have found, okay? But I want to start with a study that was done at University of Michigan, 2015. They asked a group of adults, which foods give you problems? And by problems, it was like, I can't stop eating it. I eat it when I'm not really hungry. I eat it despite the fact that I'm gaining weight and having problems. So number 5, ice cream. Number 4, cookies. This is not a surprise, right? Number 3, chips. Number 2, chocolate. And number 1 was pizza. And I'm going to argue it's not the olives. It's not the sun-dried tomatoes. It's not even the crust. It's something about that gooey yellow asphalt that's going all over the cheese and dribbling onto your fingers. I have to say that people really do love cheese, but I have to say it doesn't love you back. Here's why. If we start with weight problems, you talk to other people about why do so many folks struggle with their weight? And what answer would they give you? What are people blaming for weight problems? A lot of people say, well, sugar, kids drinking too many sodas. And I'm going to put a question mark on that because this is going to be on the test. If you look at sugar, this is sweeteners, including all the forms of sugar. And as you can see, as the years went by, sugar went up and up and up and up and up, and then it started going down. This is 1999. That was the year that people started really digging into bottled water instead of soda so much. Now, there's still sugar and there's still soda, but it's been descending. However, this is cheese. Cheese is going up. Now, here's my question. Which way is our weight problems going? Is it going down with the sugar, or is it going up with, okay. So obesity is tracking cheese. So that sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? Well, the average American consumes 60,000 calories worth of cheese every year. I'm not eating any. Somebody else is getting 120,000. So back in 1909, the USDA started tracking what Americans eat, and in that year, the average American did not eat much cheese. In a year's time, the average person consumed 3.8 pounds of cheese in a year. Swiss people eat cheese. We don't eat cheese in Peoria. But then what happened? Then in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2 things. Fast food came in, and fast food, you can't have a burger without a slice of cheese on top. And then the big one was pizza chains. And pizza in every grocery store, and pizza in every school, and it's convenient, kids will eat it, and I don't have to really cook, and pizza is a delivery vehicle for cheese. And as of 2014, we were at 33.9. As of 2017, we are at 35 pounds of cheese every person every year. Am I cheering you up? Wow. Look at the calories. This is very important. 1 gram of sugar, a gram is a 28th of an ounce, it's a tiny amount. 1 gram of sugar has 4 calories, okay? 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. The reason that's important is for people who are worried about weight and they're trying to lose weight, if they're only focusing on this, that's not really a particularly high calorie food. I'm not saying sugar is health food. What I am saying is this is where the calories are. Chicken fat, beef fat, cheese fat, fryer grease, that's where the calories are. Okay, so if you look at how much fat there is in foods, the leanest beef is about 29% fat, leanest chicken not much lower, about 23. Fish vary, some are lower, some are higher. But then when you look at the plant-based foods, they're much lower in fat. So where is cheese on this? Is it more like beef? Is it more like broccoli? What do you think? 70%, typical cheeses are 70% fat. Does that surprise you? Okay. And by the way, there is Coke Zero, but there is no Cheddar Zero. So there isn't a 0-calorie cheese. Okay. Now, these foods have lots of fiber in them. And fiber is big stuff. It's a boring word, but very important because fiber fills you up with effectively no calories. And one of the beauties of a vegan diet is every mouthful has some fiber in it, so your calories never really get out of line. You fill up before you really overdo it. And so all these foods have fiber except, well, let's look at how much there isn't. Baked beans, 5 grams, broccoli, 5 grams, an apple has 4, an orange 3. So plant foods, but wait a minute. Cheese is not from a plant, no fiber. So it's high in calories to cause us to gain weight, but it doesn't have any of the fiber to satisfy the appetite. So sodium, now sodium's another issue. Because if I have a high sodium diet, what could that do to my health? Anybody know? Okay, it can make my blood pressure go up, and also, I don't know if you know that sodium causes you to gain just a little bit of water weight. So if you're feeling kind of bloated and dumpy, sodium will do that to you. So an orange has about 1 milligram, an apple has 2, brown rice has 20, potato has 13, potato chips 330, but cheddar 350, same size serving as the potato chips, but cheddar has more. If it's Edam, that's 500, and let's look at Velveeta, 800 milligrams of sodium in one serving. So why is cheese fattening? It's loaded with calories, it doesn't have any fiber to fill you up, and it's got that extra sodium to just give you a couple extra pounds of water weight and make you feel bloated and crummy. Okay, so in the Adventist health study, when I got involved in research, I wasn't quite sure why Adventists are put under the microscope constantly. And I figured it out. It's because the church teachings for Adventists say, don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, avoid caffeine, and don't eat meat. And almost all Adventists are like really good at the first 3 of those. They're non-smoking, they're non-drinking, they're avoiding caffeine, but some of them eat meat and some do not. And that sets up a beautiful experiment. So you can compare the people who don't eat meat and the people who do. So this was a study that was published back in 2009 by the American Diabetes Association. Not quite 61,000 people. And they separated them according to their diets. They're looking at BMI, body mass index. Is that a familiar word? Body mass index. It's your weight, but it's adjusted for how tall you are, and we want it to be below 25 for good health, okay? So the red line here is meat eaters or non-vegetarians, and their BMI is 28.8 on average, a little too much. Now the semi-vegetarians, that's the next line, these are people who eat in moderation. Meat less than once a week. But still, they're almost as heavy as the meat eaters. Now, pesco is what? Okay, so no meat at all except for fish. They're a little slimmer. And then now we've got the lacto-ovo-vegetarian. Lacto meaning, okay, milk, dairy products. Ovo is eggs. Okay, no meat, but eggs and dairy products. That's the green line. They're a little slimmer. And now this blue line, I have to explain to my patients that a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. But as you see, they're the only group whose body mass index is smack in the middle of the healthy range on average. And what I want to zero in on is these two groups, ovo-lacto-vegetarians and vegans. I'm going to argue that the big difference between those two is cheese and other dairy products. And if you do the math, that's about a 15-pound difference between the two groups on average. Your average vegan is about 15 pounds slimmer than the average ovo-lacto-vegetarian. Okay? So, what is cheese anyway? Well, I took a trip to Teresa, Wisconsin and toured Widmer's dairy and took some pictures. And the milk comes in the morning and they pour it in this sort of wading pool kind of thing, and they stir it around and they pour in bacteria, cultures, to ferment the lactose sugar and give it that old sock smell that everyone likes so much. And then I put in rennet. Rennet is an enzyme that makes it coagulates it, makes it solid. And the enzyme comes from the fourth stomach of a newly slaughtered calf. Except that most dairies are too impatient for that, and so they use a genetically engineered rennet. Almost all dairies use that now, except for Widmer's, which uses the one from the calf. And then I drain the water out. The whey is this watery mixture of whey protein and water. And that goes out, and I'm left with these globs of cheese. And then I throw some salt on top, and the salt stops the bacterial fermentation from going too far. So what have I done? I concentrated the calories from milk to cheese. I concentrated the protein and the cholesterol and the fat and the sodium, and that's what cheese is. So can you get hooked on this stuff? I've been making a case that it's fattening and that it's not so hot for our health, but I'm going to argue that you can. First of all, anything salty we tend to like. And it's very fatty. And salty, fatty mixtures like French fries, potato chips, onion rings, they're just hard to resist. But there's something else. Have you heard of these casomorphins? Casomorphins. Casein is a protein that's in milk. Oh, there's the salt, by the way. In case you wanted to see how much salt goes into cheese, there it is. There's the grease in cheese, in case you were wondering, is it really fatty? Yes, it is. I'm glad you finished eating. But these are the casomorphins. They are opiates that form as casein is digested. Proteins are, if you could look at a protein molecule under a microscope, it's a string of beads. And each bead is an amino acid. And in your digestive tract, all those beads come apart. The amino acids come apart. And they go into your blood, and your body uses them to build things in your body. Except for casein. Casein is the milk protein, and it digests, releasing some individual beads, but it also releases little strings of beads that go to the brain and attach to the very same receptor that heroin or morphine or any other narcotic attaches to. It's called the mu receptor. And these are the chemical structures. And this is morphoceptin. This is the most potent one. This is not morphine, but morphoceptin comes from dairy. It has about 1/10 the brain binding power compared to pure morphine. So it's not enough to really get you high, but it is just enough for the little devil on your shoulder to say, that was nice. Let's do that again tomorrow. And you say to yourself, no, I don't think so. I mean, I'm feeling kind of really, I'm overdoing it. But tomorrow, around the same time, the little devil will wake up and say, you remember what we had yesterday? Moderation, okay? Moderation in all things. Have some cheese. So this stuff gets us hooked. And if that weren't bad enough, the industry and the government are doing their best to keep you hooked. Through the Freedom of Information Act, I got some slides from the U.S. government that I want to share with you. And there's a lot that I could show you, but I want to focus on one thing. In December of 2000, the government held something called the Cheese Forum. These are not my slides. These are U.S. government slides. And they wanted to figure out how we can trigger cheese craving. And they divided Americans into two groups. The enhancers are people who just use a little cheese to enhance their salad. Not interested in you. The cheese cravers, these are people who open the refrigerator door, pull a chunk of cheese right off the block and stuff it in their mouth. And now that's the group you want, because those people can be induced to double or triple or quadruple their cheese intake. And so the government has figured out their demographics. This was long before we had NSA, whatever. They've known all about your cheese eating habits for a long time. And what do we, again, these are US government slides. What do we want our integrated marketing program to do? Trigger the cheese craving. Our government wants you to crave and get a little food addicted. So how do you do that? I could try to ask restaurants to feature cheese here and there, and I could go to every ma and pa restaurant down the block, forget it. That's not going to work. It's going to take forever. What the US government did is they reasoned that in every community, you got fast food chains. If I get one corporate decision at Wendy's, I'm everywhere. So that's where they started. Wendy's, on contract with the US government, and I can show you the contract, developed the Cheddar Lovers Bacon Cheeseburger, and during the promotional period, they sold 2.25 million pounds of cheese. That's 380 tons of fat and more than a ton of pure cholesterol. Very successful. So they then worked with Subway, which had 2 sandwiches that didn't have cheese on them. They fixed that. They worked with Pizza Hut to have the ultimate cheese pizza with an entire pound of cheese on one person's serving. They worked with Burger King and Taco Bell, and it was amazing what they did. They would give them little hats that said, "Ah, the power of cheese," and they would get a script so that you drive through the little drive-through thing where you order at Taco Bell, and the voice comes on the speaker and says, "Hi, welcome to Taco Bell. Would you like to try one of our quesadillas today?" So they were instructed to promote cheese items. And it's been very, very successful. So your average American is now not eating 3.8 pounds of cheese, we're eating 35 pounds of cheese. And we think, well, there's got to be something good in there. There's a little calcium or protein or something. But listen, if it were any worse, it would be Vaseline. Now, some things are fattening. Lard is fattening. But people don't really eat a lot of lard. Now, some things are addicting. Caffeine is addicting, but who cares? It doesn't really have a lot of calories in it necessarily. But if a food is fattening and addicting, it basically guarantees that your weight is never going to be where you want it to be. Okay? You with me? All right. Now, so is this bad for us? There are a lot of things that I could tell you about, but I want to tell you about Catherine. Catherine Lawrence is a person, grew up in Louisiana. In the Air Force, she was an engineer, and she was one of the first people to go into Iraq in 2003, and because she built bases. And I got to tell you, when you're in a war zone, this is not a time when you're going to gain a lot of weight, eating military rations. And so while she was there, she was working hard, and finally her tour of duty came to an end, and she went back to Louisiana. And when she got off the plane, her family said, "Come on, let's go out and eat." And so they started tucking into all the things that she had missed while she was in Iraq, especially cheese. And it came in many forms that she adored. And she had a friend who knew that she especially loved these guys, these mac and cheese box things that college sophomores live off of. And her friend, for her birthday, gave her an entire case of macaroni and cheese dinners. And for 48 days straight, Catherine ate macaroni and cheese until the case was finished. Okay, what happened? Well, she gained weight, but more than that, she started having some pain in her abdomen. They gradually got worse. And it waxed and waned with her monthly cycle. And she went to see the doctor, who eventually made this diagnosis of something called endometriosis. Endometriosis means you hurt. You've got pain. Cells from the lining of the uterus have migrated outside, and they're attaching in the abdominal, various places around the abdominal cavity, and it hurts. And for many women, you have to have a hysterectomy, and that's it. Now she said, wait a minute. I was hoping to have a family. And the gynecologist said, if you can tough it out, you don't have to have the surgery. But as time went on, she was getting worse and worse and worse, and it got to the point where for a few days she was unable to get out of bed. And she talked with her husband. They said, okay, I have to have the operation. So she was going to go to the hospital and have a hysterectomy. But a friend called her up and said, "What? Let's try a diet change, because we've known for cancer patients that you often change your diet to try to get your hormones in better balance. Breast cancer patients will often do this." And so her friend said, "Let's do vegan, no dairy, and see what happens. See what happens." Weeks went by, and she started losing weight, and she started feeling better, and better and better and better, and the pain was just kind of going away. So she went back to the doctor and had another laparoscopy, and the doctor's looking in through this little incision in her abdomen, and the doctor pulls the scope out and sews her up, and went out to the waiting room and spoke to her husband while she was in recovery. And the doctor said, this is really quite remarkable. Her endometriosis is effectively gone. And her husband said, she changed her diet, and she has felt so good ever since she made this change. And the doctor said, no. There is no way. Foods do not cause endometriosis, and foods cannot cure it. There's only one explanation for what's happened. This is a miracle. So that may be written on her medical chart, I'm not sure. But anyway, she lost a lot of weight. Her endometriosis disappeared. She has 2 children, and feels really good. And so she came to PCRM and said, "I want to become one of your Food for Life instructors." And she now teaches for us in Texas and has spread the word a lot. And it has just been a dramatic thing for her. Okay, so what about this? I use the word hormones in cheese. Well, let's explore this a little bit. Cows, this may come as a surprise. Cows do not make milk until they have been pregnant and given birth. That's true for all mammals. A cow doesn't just arrive from a factory and, "Hi, I'll be your milk machine." They are impregnated, they give birth, and then they produce milk. To keep them producing milk at high volume, the farmer impregnates the cow every single year. Not personally, but the cow is artificially inseminated every year. Now, a cow pregnancy is about 9 months, very much like a human pregnancy. So 9 months out of 12, they're pregnant. And a pregnant cow makes a lot of estrogen. That's the group of female sex hormones, especially estradiol. And I want to show you. Here it is. This is the amount of estradiol getting into the plasma as the pregnancy is going along. And then it gets into the milk from the cow, even bigger, especially later in pregnancy. Now, it's not a lot. I'm quite prepared to believe it's just a trace. However, when I turn milk into cheese, what do? I concentrate the fat, I get rid of all the water in the way, and the fat is where the hormones go. I'm still going to say it's just a trace. However, researchers in Australia in 2010 brought in a group of postmenopausal women. They thought, let's see what's happening with them, because they, in theory, really shouldn't have much estrogen in their blood after the age of menopause. Did this go out? Whoop. There we go. Sorry. And these are the non-milk drinkers. These are the milk drinkers. You can see that somehow having dairy in your diet does seem to elevate estradiol. And then researchers in Rochester, New York said, well, what about men? They went into a fertility clinic. And they showed that the men who had low cheese intake and those who had a high cheese intake were compared. And here they are. This is just sperm count. These are the sperm counts of the cheese-eating men, and these are the sperm counts of the low cheese-eating men. Get the idea? So the concern that these researchers are raising, both in the women and the men, is that there is something about these traces of estrogens that are affecting the women and the men, at least to a slight degree. And the one that I'm most concerned about is researchers in California then looked at women who had been treated for breast cancer. And those who consumed the most cheese had about a 49% increased risk of dying of their cancer compared to those who did not. And that's important because a lot of women who have been treated for breast cancer are out there avoiding soy products. You know what I'm talking about? They hear, oh, soy's got estrogen in it. You hear people say this. This is a certain mythology. Let me set you straight on this. In 1921, soy products were shown to have isoflavones in them. Isoflavones are natural compounds in soy and many other plants. Their chemical structure looks vaguely like estrogens. They're not estrogens, but they look rather similar. And that caused many researchers to wonder if they had estrogenic activity. And a number of studies have been carried out. It turns out that women who consume the most soy have about 30% less risk of getting breast cancer compared to those who avoid soy. And among cancer patients, breast cancer patients, those who consume the most soy have about a 30% reduction in the likelihood that their cancer will come back. So is this making sense? So in other words, you don't need soy. It's totally optional, but it does not cause cancer. The women who consume the most soy have the least likelihood of getting cancer, about 30% less. And if they've had cancer in the past, again, about a 30% reduction in likelihood that that cancer will come back and will kill them. Okay? So why do doctors sometimes say to patients, you've been treated for cancer, avoid tofu? The reason is they don't teach nutrition in medical school very well. And the doctor read it sitting at the swimming pool in a magazine that was left there, and he passes it along to his patients. And that's what passes for nutrition instruction. All right, so this is Mark Ramirez. Mark grew up in Texas. He was recruited to the University of Michigan to play football. And when you're a right guard and your job is to tear a hole in the opponent's line, being 285 pounds is a pretty good thing. However, as his career came to an end and he entered the world of business and he wasn't burning off 5,000 calories a day as a football player, he gained weight. And in addition, he developed diabetes, and he developed high blood pressure, and he had erectile dysfunction. And these are he's not alone. These are everyday problems in America. And as fate would have it, he heard about this plant-based diet that ought to help and read a book about reversing diabetes. And it didn't say, don't eat bread or rice. It said, plant-based diet, keep the oils low, eat healthy foods. And he tried it, and these problems went away. And year after year after year, he stuck with it, and these problems never came back. And all the pills that he was on were eventually, at his doctor's request, thrown into the garbage because he didn't need them anymore. And I want to show you what's going on. Whenever I talk to medical audiences, many of them are not aware of what causes type 2 diabetes. I don't know why, because this is something that researchers have known about now for many, many years. I want to walk you through this. This is a muscle cell. And the reason the reason I'm showing you a muscle cell is that if you could look at where glucose, sugar in your blood is going to, most of it is going to the muscles because it powers your movements. It also maintains your body temperature. So sugar, for the most part, that's in your blood is going into the muscles. So if a person has diabetes, the doctor says, hey, you got too much sugar in your blood. That's what the blood tests show. And the reason is it can't get into the cell. That's the whole deal. So why not? Well, here's glucose. It's trying to get into the cell. And to get in, you need a hormone which is called insulin. And insulin is like a little key. It's like these little blue keys that attach to that red receptor there. And that triggers the glucose to go into the cell. That's what's supposed to happen. However, there's something else in the cell. See this fat? Globs of fat, chicken fat, beef fat, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. That bottle cost $85, came straight from Italy. The fat that we eat passes almost unchanged, and it goes into the cells and stops insulin from being able to work. That's the cause of type 2 diabetes. It has nothing to do with eating too much rice or too many potatoes. It's fat building up inside the cell. By the way, doctors hate words like fat. It's only got 3 letters. So we call it intramyocellular lipid. An intramyocellular lipid started out as a cheese omelet. And cheese is 70% fat. That fat goes almost unchanged in there, and the insulin says, whoa, I can't really open up that cell anymore. That's the issue. So if I want to reverse a person's diabetes, what do? First of all, I draw this on a napkin, and I say, this is your cell. We want to get rid of the fat in your cell. So vegan diet has how much animal fat? None. And if I keep the oils really, really low, this fat starts to dissipate. And their doctor tells them 2 weeks later, this is amazing. Your blood sugar has come down. And the patient says, I know, I'm feeling kind of shaky. Well, we've got to cut down on your insulin. And the patient says, this, really? Great. And then 2 weeks after that, they're coming off their medicines, and pretty soon the insulin's in the trash. And the doctor says, I was taught in medical school, once you're diabetic, you'll always be diabetic, but they start telling the patient, I don't think you have diabetes anymore. And those are words that we've had to get used to using, which we didn't need those words when I was in medical school. We need them now, happily. Okay, so this was Mark before, and as the years gone by, he lost his weight and never put it back, never got diabetes again or any of these conditions. So it really works. Okay, the last thing, if it's all right, I'd like to talk about the ethical side of things. And I've written a lot of books, and I always focus on the science part of it. But as I was doing this research, I was really struck by things that I was sort of unaware of. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share them with you. Many people will go vegetarian because they're concerned about the animals. But when it comes to dairy, they'll say, well, they don't kill them, so it's okay to have dairy products. All right. I want to show you some more slides. These are not my slides. These are from the United Nations. And the United Nations has helpful diagrammatic guides to help people who speak many different languages to farm. And some of these guides are for the dairying, how you can run a good dairy farm. And as I mentioned, you're not going to have any milk until the cow is pregnant, and you don't want nature to follow its course with bouquets and chocolates and no, that's not the way a dairy farm works. You have to impregnate this cow. So here is what you do. These are, again, United Nations slides. Well, anyway, what the farmhand does is takes a glove and puts it on his left hand, and that glove goes all the way up to his shoulder. And that hand will go into the rectum of the cow, all the way up to his shoulder, and then he can feel through the rectal wall, can feel the uterus. Then with his right hand, he takes what looks like a knitting needle and puts it through the cervix and injects semen that had been extracted from a bull. And this is the way it looks in reality. And that cow is not going to object to it because she's chained, and one cow after another, that's what they do to them. And then they write the date on their side, and she doesn't have any choice in this matter. 9 months later, she's going to give birth. And this little baby is in the hay and looks up at mom. And she looks down at her baby. And she starts licking her baby, and he or she is bonding to mom. Now the farmer knows one thing, that if that baby drinks his mother's milk, my dairy is not going to work very well. So the farmer has a tool that's going to prevent that from happening. That tool is called a wheelbarrow. You arrive with a wheelbarrow, and you pick the calf up, and you stick him in the wheelbarrow, and you walk out. Now, the mother cow is not very happy with that, and she will follow you and try to stop you from stealing her baby. I mean, there's no bigger bond in nature than a mother and her child. I don't care what species you are, she's going to fight you. And she will fight you until the gate slams in her face, and then she sees her calf going away, and she will cry all night long. And anybody who lives next to a dairy, they will tell you this. They hear it. And if the calf is male, he has no future in the dairy industry, so he will be sold as veal, and you all know what veal calves go through. There's no civilized person would eat that, but there will always be veal as long as there is dairy. You can't have a dairy without it. If she's female, the female calves can join the herd. So we're going to keep her around, but we're not going to give her milk. We'll give her a milk replacer, and she's going to live in a little hutch like that. And then this is something I found in the newspaper in Massachusetts in 2013. Strange noises coming from the high road near Sunshine Dairy Farm Monday night and into yesterday morning prompted local police to alert residents that there's nothing spooky or scary going on. According to Newberry Police Sergeant Patty Fisher, the noises are coming from the mother cows who are lamenting the separation from their calves. It happens every year at the same time. So this is just normal business. So it starts to seem kind of creepy that to have this product that is really there just for recreation. The animals go through impregnation and separation over and over and over again. Except, oh, and by the way, the female calves are dehorned. They're going to have horns and they're going to hurt you. So you cut the horn off, and if you get to her early enough, you can just scrape it right out of the skull. Anesthesia is never used. That process is called disbudding. So wait a minute. They are killed. When I was finishing the cheese trap, I took the latest statistics from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In this just with this 1 week, over 200,000 dairy cows were slaughtered. Why is that? Because farmers are very smart business people. They track how much feed it takes to produce milk. And at about age 4, it turns out that the mother is not as productive as her daughters would be if they took her place. So mom, who had been artificially inseminated, gave birth, separated from her infants, is now going to be killed. She's just hung up and slaughtered like all the rest, and her children take her place. And they go through the same thing until they're 4. And then they are slaughtered and their children take place. And that's every dairy in every part of the world, big, small, cow, goat, I don't care. That's the way it works. Okay? And now the reason I mention this is there are a lot of folks who will say, okay, but you know, once in a while it's all right and da-da-da. Once we realize what we're really doing in the world that we live, it becomes a stronger motivation for us. And we think, you know, maybe that'll kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. And your coronary arteries don't care why you change. They're glad whatever our motivation is. Okay, so what can I eat instead? This is the easy part. This is where it becomes fun. When I wrote The Cheese Trap, the first half is all the science and understanding the health part. But the second half, I worked with Drina Burton, who is a wonderful recipe developer. And we talked about what can go on my salad and how can I make a fettuccine alfredo. And could I make a cheesecake without any cheese? And the answer is you can do all these things. And you can really have fun with it. And so let me encourage you to do that. When you're making a diet change, think about experimenting. Not everything has to work out. Some can be a dud. That's what experimenting is all about. But over time, you discover it's an adventure. And you have new tastes, new products, new books, new information to share with friends, and your life really does change. And many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So instead of feta on my salad, I could put a little chunk of avocado if I wanted to. Instead of grilled cheese. When I was in Fargo, we didn't have hummus, okay? But somewhere along the line, somebody told me how to spell it and pronounce it, and that's pretty good on a sandwich. And I can have this pizza or I can have that pizza, and they're both frozen. They're both at the store. They both heat the same way. Or I can do it myself, and I can sprinkle some nutritional yeast, and it tastes just like cheese and it doesn't have any fat in it at all. So there's a lot. I can have ricotta or I can have tofu ricotta. There are many ways to play with this and replace cheese. And there are vegan cheeses out there now made. Some of them are made from almond milk, like Kite Hill. It's a cheese-making process, but instead of starting with cow's milk, they start with almond milk. Fair enough. Or tree line, they start with cashews. There are different things that replace it. So this is my book, and I hope that those of you who are already well along your journey will give it to a friend. And what I discovered a long time ago is that you can tell when a book has not been opened. You go to their house and you see this book you gave them 6 months ago. So what you have to do is open it up, find some part and put a Post-it note in there, and then find another one and another one. Like put 2 or 3 Post-it notes in there, and then put a Post-it note on the front that says, "Hi Tom, I thought of you when I read those sections." They can't resist. They're going to open it up, they're going to start reading, and they're going to, I don't know, what was he thinking about me? You know, they'll end up reading the whole book, and you're going to be the world's best propagandist. Let me mention the 21-Day Vegan Kickstart, because we've got a great partnership going here with GreenFare. This is something we started years ago, where you go online, and every day you get a free email, with menus and recipes and cooking videos, and there's an app that goes with it, and it's in English and Spanish and Mandarin, and we have one for people from the Indian subcontinent with all Indian ingredients. And here at GreenFare, you can sign up. When's the next one coming? It's like 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks. So not only do you get all of the instruction live and in person and plenty of time for Q&A, but you also go home with food in your refrigerator. And it's great for you, but it's also great with anybody who happens to come by. It's just totally life-changing. For medical professionals, we have our conference coming up July 28th, 29th, 2 days of continuing medical education on all the cutting-edge topics of the day. We set up a medical center so that when a person comes in with diabetes, they are not told that it is a metformin deficiency. And when a person has a high cholesterol level, they're not told that this is a Lipitor deficiency. They're told that we need to work on our diet. We'll give you medication if you need it, but we always focus on food for any food-related issue. That's all I got. I hope this has been useful, and most importantly, many of you know lots and lots and lots about food and about making the transition. But the one thing that I think is really critical is that we have to share everything that we know with other people, especially the next generation. Because kids growing up now think it is totally normal to have fast foods on every corner and to have convenience stores on every corner, which did not exist a generation or two ago. And they turn on the TV and half the commercials are snack foods, and the other half of the commercials are medication to undo the effects of the snack foods, and they think that's normal. And a person who's got diabetes is having fun on TV, and they're taking, oh, Invocana, that's a new one. Oh, wow, I wish I could have that. Wait a minute. We have got to change the world that we live in. And it starts not with finger wagging or with guilting or even shame for all the dumb stuff that we did in the past. We've all done things. It starts with fun. It starts trying a new restaurant, trying a new recipe, trying a new book, trying a new video, whatever. And there's lots of them coming out. New products at the store. You can have an 8-year-old kid. Let's try a couple of different veggie burgers and see which one we like the best. I like this one. I don't like that one. Let's try almond milk, soy milk, oat milk, rice milk. Okay, I like this one. I don't like that one. Fine, they can really get into it. Let's make our vegan pizza. You take the green olives, the black olives. You take the nutritional yeast. And they get into this together. And when that happens, there's no more guilt. There's just this joyful feeling that I got a little more power than I had before. I don't have anything to apologize to animals for anymore, or at least not too much. And the earth is breathing easier too. We're doing what we can for that too. And it's just a really cool way to embrace the power of change. So again, I want to thank Gwen, and I want to thank Pericles for what you do. And thanks to all of you for letting me share this time with you. Thank you.